So this is a video that went up, I think, on Sunday, called How Donald Trump Dominated the Online Ecosystem in the 2024 Election. This is Jeremiah Johnson, whose name sounds strangely familiar, talking about the manosphere, and which is purported to have helped Trump win the 2024 election. Not exactly my diagnosis. I feel like the biggest help to Trump winning the election was the Harris campaign itself. But let's hear him out, see what he's got to say, and specifically about Joe Rogan. If I can find that. Oh my God! Pull that up.
Very gratuitously to court him. And at the same time, the Democrats have been pushing him away. You know, one or two people went on his show, like Bernie Sanders went on Rogan, but
I love how this guy considers Bernie one of them, like one of the Democrats, right? Like, we sent Bernie over, and we sent Fetterman over. Red Rover, send Fetterman on over. But in reality, you're talking about, was this in 2020? I can't remember. Bernie Sanders on Rogan. When did this happen? I can't remember if this was 2016 or 2020. Bernie Sanders Rogan. When did this happen? 5 years ago. So what? Okay, so this was before. Yeah, this would have been before the 2020 election. Not only did Bernie go on Joe Rogan said that he was voting for Bernie. Right, and this is the whole thing. This isn't like Bernie Sanders acting as a liaison for I mean, Bernie Sanders does sort of act like a liaison or has been acting in some ways as a liaison for the Biden administration. He has gotten a certain amount of influence in that administration. He's affected some of the policy, including the labor policy, set it in a positive direction. At the same time, he's kind of let down a lot of his supporters in his, lack of, in how slowly and undecisively he's come to any sort of a moral stance on the issues around Gaza, right? So, he is, I guess, regarded as a more of an institutional figure now than he was in 2016. Bernie was considered a disruptor. Bernie was somebody that you couldn't vote for because you were sexist if you voted for Bernie, and you wanted Donald Trump to win if you voted for Bernie, right? And then in 2020, Bernie was for a while the front runner up until the point where the establishment Dems decided that they would not accept a Bernie Sanders candidacy in 2020, even though it's the most logical thing after the Dems lost in 2016 to maybe try another tack against Trump. But yeah, the shitlib candidates dropped out. They all endorsed Biden. You all know the story.
Has very actively courted Joe Rogan. They have gone on his show. Is a benefit. They want to own the libs. If you get outraged at them, they think, awesome, I'm winning. So
he's talking about like the Curtis Yarvins and the Bronze Age perverts of the world here. The type of it's so weird. This guy's whole come on is so weird, right? He's on one hand talking about how effective and the far right figures, you could even say like the nihilistic figures on the right are, right? That like this is a great success for the right. And then at the same time, but the problem for the left, the problem for Democrats is that we're listening to the activists too much, and they were too far to the left. Kamala Harris, somebody that was involved in law enforcement for her whole career, is being portrayed as you know, she's just a little too beholden to the activist types, right? It's wild. It's wild, the kind of cognitive dissonance that you're seeing from establishment Dems like Jeremiah Johnson here, in terms of the prescription that worked for the Republicans was tacking to the far right, and the prescription that's going to work for the Democrats is also tacking to the right. It's becoming Republican light. I believe that this was tried. I believe that Liz Cheney was courted. I believe that Kamala, her biggest selling point, or one of her biggest selling points from her speech at the DNC, was that we're going to have the most lethal military on the face of the planet. If there was anything woke or leftist or activist about Kamala Harris, she was keeping it very well hidden. And yet it's not enough for assholes like this. They got the same prescription that they've had since the 80s, since the Democrats became loser liberals, since they threw away the legacy of the likes of FDR and LBJ in terms of social programs for neoliberalism. And they have been fucking losers ever since. And even when they're not losers in terms of politics, even when they don't lose the election, they somehow manage to lose on a policy level. They somehow manage to, water down any kind of reform that they end up doing. So how's that working out for you? How is that working out for you?
Try more. Let me drink those liberal tears. That's the tradition he comes from. And J.D. Vance has managed to put a slightly more respectable.
So we got some questions for chat as far as who this is. We're watching Pod Save America. We're watching Offline with John Favreau, who is one of the Pod Johns, one of the hosts of Pod Save America. And this is his guest for the week. This is Jeremiah Johnson. I don't know much about this guy. Do they tell us about him? They don't. It would be nice to know. I mean, I kind of like. Do you want to watch the intro? Let's just watch the intro really quick to figure out who this guy is.
Thinkers of the last 10 years, you are probably thinking of people with usernames and not real names. You're thinking of Mencius Moldbug, who's a guy named Curtis Yarvin. He's a blogger.
Oh, yeah.
And Yarvin has written long essays defending slavery. Like, he believes slavery should be a part of society and that some people deserve to be enslaved. Very explicitly, he says, yes, this is a good thing.
Yeah, no, like a lot of shit. He says a lot of shit, right? He talked about turning the poor and the homeless into biodiesel. And then he said he was shit posting about that, and he didn't really mean that, and he thought that a more acceptable and humane solution would be to matrix the poor. Like, as in, you know how the Matrix works, right? You're hooked up to a simulation where your life is not real. It's a simulation, and you're essentially a human battery. That he was like, no, actually, maybe something more like that would be. So like, it's like, which one is the shit post, right? The one that I could actually imagine you doing that's like a monstrous, like, violation on human rights, or the one that sounds like science fiction. I think you know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's not a lot of comfort for him to be like, no, I was shit posting about the biodiesel thing. I think that actually a matrix would be a better solution. Like, I mean, it's hard to tell where these guys are serious, where the line between, like, if you think you've seen like edgelords, right? You haven't seen edgelords until you've seen the far right weirdos that have been super influential on the right. These are people that J.D. Vance loves. J.D. Vance follows. J.D. Vance tries to emulate. This is where his, like, childless cat lady shit comes from, right? So the right's following their extremist weirdos, and apparently to great success, while this guy's prescription for the left is we got to make sure that anybody that says trans rights is just like, hey, we're not with them. We're not with them. We're normal people here. We're not pushing the envelope.
And
the same kind of shit, the same kind of loser liberalism that made the Democrats think that they shouldn't support gay marriage.
Vance mentions him approvingly on podcasts.
to be clear.
Not the Mountain Man.
But we've got him on a future week, right?
But something that someone who I've been wanting to have on the show for a while because I really like that Substack.
And everybody loves Robert Redford.
And he does the, and he also does the worst tweets bracket.
It's a very funny. He's someone who is a
Sorry, did I miss?
And everybody loves
Jeremiah Johnson.
Not
Okay.
the Mountain Man, to be clear.
Not the Mountain Man.
But we've got him on a future week, right?
But something that someone who I've been wanting to have on the show for a while because I really like that Substack.
And everybody loves Robert Redford.
And he does.
He's a Substack enjoyer. Favreau is a what? Oh no, this is bad, chat. This is bad. Look, I don't want to paint with a broad brush. I've got friends that have Substacks, right? So, being on Substack doesn't make you a bad person. It's just a platform. It's just a platform, right? But there's a tendency of that platform, and somebody like Anna Kasparian or somebody like Barry Weiss is pretty typical, right? That's what, in terms of the left on Substack, that's what you expect to find.
Does the and he also does the worst tweets bracket.
It's a very funny. He's someone who is a chronicler of online and how annoying it is, which we love.
Which our wheelhouse. So last week we did a bit of an election postmortem where we talked about the internet's role in the outcome.
Okay, I don't care.
Still in this meeting, and we've only met on Twitter, so it's nice to actually see you and see you on a screen. Your initial take on the election, in your.
So yeah, I guess we're not going to get anything more about this guy. I want to kind of concentrate on a specific point that he's making about Joe Rogan, because that's what I commented on, and actually my comment is right now the top comment on this video. Yeah, pats on the back, But yeah, he's talking about the far right and their influence, their unbelievable influence on the Republican Party, the establishment Republican Party, particularly Vice President J.D. Vance, and sort of lauding them for that. And then at the same time, we're talking about the problem with the left, which is apparently that we're a bunch of activist SJWs who will not tolerate any other viewpoints. I don't know. It's there's not a lot of logical consistency. There's a lot of compartmentalizing and cognitive dissonance, and he's just not making a argument that I don't know. Is he thinking this through?
Show like Bernie Sanders went on Rogan, but the net result to court him show take it all the way back to the Joe Rogan thing, and they don't think the idiosyncratic voters will punish them for saying weird stuff.
Okay, so isn't that interesting, right? He's talking about the Curtis Yarvins and the Bronze Age perverts, right? People that say like out of pocket shit on the right, and that are tied to JD Vance, right? Like visibly tied to JD Vance, and they don't think that the voters will punish them. But whereas on the left, look at the difference in how he talks about that.
And by and large, they're right, because to take it all the way back to the Joe Rogan thing, I think that the right for the last 8 years or so has very actively courted Joe Rogan. They have gone on his show. They have said, we like you. You should like us. Here's a bunch of things we think. What do you think? And like they're very much trying very gratuitously to court him. And at the same time, the Democrats have been pushing him away. One or two people went on his show, like Bernie Sanders went on Rogan. But the net result of Bernie Sanders going on Rogan was that, number one, it works. Rogan enjoyed him and endorsed him. But number two, Bernie Sanders fans got super mad at him and said, how dare you do this? Rogan is a bigot and he's beyond the pale.
So now I won't say that there wasn't some clapback on Bernie for going on Rogan, but I will say that the majority of that clapback came from the institutional Democratic Party itself. And I don't know whether, what is he hanging it? Like, I'm trying to find some thread of like logical consistency with Jeremiah Johnson here. Because this was used, I guess, opportunistically to attack Bernie Sanders. The party, the Democratic Party, does not want Bernie Sanders. I am convinced, even if he is the only way that they can win in a given election. And granted, Chad, I'm not talking about 2024 and I'm not talking about 2028. I'm talking about 2020 or 2016, right? Even if a Bernie Sanders candidate is the only candidate that can win, because we're in a space which is favorable to outside figures like Donald Trump, who was able to essentially take over the Republican Party. Even if the only way that the Democrats can win is with an outsider, they don't want one. They would rather lose. They would rather have Trump. I'm convinced that that's how it is. Look at the way that they curtailed Kamala's campaign, which started out with a lot of good vibes and hope, and picking essentially the best possible vice president she could have if you were a progressive. You like to see a Tim Walz choice. It went from that to don't talk about price gouging, don't call the Republicans weird. Go back to Joe Biden's strategy of saying that Donald Trump is a danger to democracy, and if you're voting for him, you're riding with Hitler. And go back to courting Liz Cheney, courting Republicans, trying to win with the center, actively pushing away your base, actively pushing away the people that you would expect to do the canvassing, to be that energy, actively pushing, on one hand, they push these people away and they're like, oh, a bunch of student activists, causing troubles, being bad optics for the Democratic Party in the student protests over the summer. But at the same time, who do you expect to go door to door for you if not college students? That's the vote that the Democrats lost, right? We talked a lot about our black voters leaving the Democratic Party. That didn't turn out so much. A lot about shifts in demographic voting patterns from the Latino community. We didn't talk about the shift in the younger demographic and where that might have come from. And they're unable to draw the most obvious logical conclusion, which is if you discussed a portion of your party, even if it's not the majority of your party, let's say that most Democrats, Gaza is not their top issue, fine, right? But if your foreign policy is revolting to enough of your base, you're going to lose along those margins. And you're not going to make that up with suburban Liz Cheney voters. Those don't exist. That you're living in another time period, right? You're appealing to voters from I don't know, the 2010s or something. These voters do not exist. You are a fancy weasel. Thank you for the 15 stream watch streak, Omega Star.
And so nobody does it anymore.
Right. Which is I mean, I do think that the JD Vance point, I do think this is a vulnerability for them, that Republicans, that they seem sort of too online, weird, insular. But where I really agree is that,
okay, so here's the deal. Too online, insular, and weird, obsessed with trans people, can be an Achilles heel for the Republicans if you make it one. But if you're spooked that making fun of them for their preoccupation about the 4 trans athletes playing high school sports or whatever in a time where people are not able to afford food, and you pair that with with fighting against price gouging, with saying the rent is too high, you can beat them. You can beat that terminally online group. However, all right, even though the terminally online demographic that the Republicans, whether it be Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis, are courting through their strategy of earned media. Earned media is the kind of media you don't have to pay for. You're not buying an ad. You are booked on Joe Rogan, for instance. That's earned media, right? You are, you give a speech in New York instead of in a swing state, and everybody's like, "Huh, what's going on here? Why is he giving a speech in New York?" And everybody covers it, right? That's earned media. These are two different examples of that. Earned media will actually add up, and if the Democrats don't do something to combat that, if they don't have a way of exploiting that and calling it out, because in the reality, Like, look, the online space is becoming more and more influential. More and more people are getting their news from influencers, from online, from TikTok, from YouTube, from wherever. More and more people are plugged into a feed, and are, hard to reach through traditional means. But it's not a majority yet. If you ask somebody about, let's say the Ethan Klein drama, which we're going to cover in the second half of the stream, right? If I get on the bus, and as I'm getting on the bus, I ask the bus driver, what do you think about the Ethan Klein drama? Not only does he not know what the not only do they not know what the Ethan Klein drama is, but I will not be able to explain that shit to them in the time that it takes me to take out my card, to swipe it, and to get out of the way for the next person to get on the bus, right? That's the bus driver test, we call that. Like, if there's something online that you couldn't explain to the bus driver while you're getting on, then it's probably a little too online for most people. So, like, right, you can still turn that into a liability. Maybe one day you won't be able to. Maybe one day everybody will be. I don't know though. I don't know. How do you feel about that? I feel like there's two different movements, right? There's a movement to get more and more of your shit online. There's a movement to distrust the legacy media. There's a movement away from, television, obviously, but there's also kind of a movement towards touching grass. And so I wonder if this like online aspect of our lives might have a like an endpoint, like a limit, right? You can only take it so far, right? So, but anyway, regardless, for now, you can exploit calling somebody a sweaty basement dwelling, terminally online weirdo. If you choose that tactic, instead of trying to appeal to the Liz Cheneys of the world, instead of taking on the entire Biden campaign staff, and instead of allowing the party establishment to tell you how to run your campaign, right? And Kamala was having great success with that in the beginning, during the Brat Summer era, if you will, and she stepped away from that much to her detriment.
We have to focus less on what people say, or people meaning Republicans in power, what they say versus what they.
Sassy Sasarai says, I can explain anything to a bus driver if the bus driver gives me time. They don't, though. I mean, unless you're like the only person on the bus, they don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, you get on the bus, there's 15 people behind you also trying to get on the bus. That's the situation that the bus driver test of whether something is too terminally online for normies, because there still is you still are going to win more elections with normies. Also, Omega Star, thank you for the gifted sub on Twitch to Aaron D. Pat. Aaron D. Pat, you just got weaseled, and that's a good thing.
Because I do think that idiosyncratic voter, it matters to them if legislation is passed or proposed, or they think that, a Republican's going to do something that takes away a right, a freedom, makes things more
metaphor it is.
Whatever it may be. I think that the age of like, well, that's something offensive that I heard from them, and that's going to move votes. It's just not likely to move votes of people who haven't already made up their mind at this point. And I think that it's hard. It's really hard to internalize.
But listen to what Favreau's saying, right? And this is what disappointed me. I thought that the Pod Johns kind of got it on some level, right? When I saw that conversation with Hassan, I thought that maybe they understood. But this is making me think that they really don't, because like at the same time as he's saying, you will not, that the right wing, there's no way to punish the right wing for their association with Project 2025, their association with Peter Thiel. Oh my God. You know what? If you're kissing corporate ass, that's true, right? That's the problem. Look, what I'm talking about, if you're not familiar, is a member of the PayPal mafia, I guess they call themselves, named Peter Thiel, who is intimate. No, let's use a different word there. Who is strongly connected to JD Vance, and I would say has a lot of influence through JD Vance, right? So you got a fucking tech bro gargoyle, billionaire, asshole, who is the paymaster of JD Vance. that should be exploitable in and of itself. Oh, you want to say that you're the you want to say that you're against the establishment? Well, then why does a billionaire fucking own you, dude? That sounds pretty establishment to me. But you can't say that if you're Kamala Harris and you're hearing in one ear, hey, don't go too hard on the corporations, right? We want the corporations to support us. Yeah, I mean, that's where this really falls apart. But yeah, what he's trying to say is that even if it's a connection to like a Curtis Yarvin, a connection to a Bronze Age pervert, or a connection to like some of these right-wing figures on the far right that say out-of-pocket shit, that there's just no way that you're gonna, make that a liability for them.
Realize that when you're dealing with Donald Trump or even someone like JD Vance, because they will give you something outrageous to get outraged about every single day.
Yeah, but there you go. He's got it, right? This is the thing with Donald Trump, right? Donald Trump says a lot of out-of-pocket things himself, right? He doesn't need JD Vance connecting him to, tech bro gargoyles or right-wing weirdos or anything like that to, how he is enough of a liability himself. But he manages that liability with a media strategy that I'm really surprised the Democrats have not. And remember, this is Pod Save America. These are Democrats that are they've been part of campaigns, right? These are speechwriters and campaign staff for Obama and Hillary and people like that, right? They still have not figured out how Donald Trump is able to avoid being impaled on one of the many out-of-pocket things that he says. The example that I always go back to is when he compared his January 6th speech to the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King. And the comparison was, I actually think I had more people. Martin Luther King, Martin Luther whoever, Martin Luther whomegalol, I had more people at January 6th. Suck it, right? That should have ended his campaign. Like, right? That if the Democrats had drilled down on that or like any number of things, right, you could have really made some, you could have divided the electorate in a way that's favorable to your side. More people are going to be put off by Donald Trump flexing on Martin Luther King than are going to be like, yeah, no, that's great. January 6th, I love January 6th, right? But they don't do it because Donald Trump is always on to the next thing. He's on to the eating the cats, eating the dogs, right? And the Democrats, they take the bait. They're like, squirrel, 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 right? You can't get distracted. You got to pick something that will work and you got to stick with it. You got to make it stick and you define the candidate by that. Instead of Donald Trump being able to appear at a McDonald's and redefine himself as like, oh, hey, it's a guy handing out French fries and, oh, he really likes French fries. He really likes McDonald's. He's just like me for real, right? Instead of letting that asshole define himself, you've got to define him. The Democratic Party failed in 2016. 2020 was a weird year. Donald Trump was the incumbent and probably lost the election because of his, on-the-job performance as president. And then 2024, they still didn't have anything. You've already run against this guy 2 times. And you're going to tell me you don't understand that he does the weave. He talks about this and he talks about that and he's got Hannibal Lecter and he's got that. You got to drill down on something. You can't expect to just throw out a laundry list of like, look, we got Hannibal Lecter, we got blowing the microphone, we've got like you can't expect the laundry list to work. Laundry lists nobody remembers what's on the laundry list.
Multiple times a day. But I do think it requires like a level of discipline and focus from the left that I don't know that we've had, and I don't know that social media really incentivizes, or even just life on the internet incentivizes. But I do think that it is very notable that I was thinking about this with RFK Jr., God help us, as the HHS secretary, and Mike Pence this morning. We're recording this on Friday. Mike Pence this morning opposed him because he's not sufficiently anti-abortion. Now, I'm going to wager that Mike Pence is going to be pretty lonely in that kind of opposition. The anti-abortion groups, a few of them I'm sure will oppose him, put out statements. I don't think it's going to be a problem for his confirmation because I think Republicans, like you said, are more willing to be like, yeah, I don't like this guy's views on X, Y, and Z, but he's in the MAGA tent now. He's part of the crew. He's part of the identity. So and he's going to piss off the libs. So let's put him in HHS.
I agree. Donald Trump has been reasonably good at moderating on key issues, I think, and he doesn't get credit from Democrats for doing that. And you can say whether this is sincere or not sincere, but he has a few things he cares about. He cares.
Chat, I feel like this guy, I can smell the Substack on him. I can smell the Substack flop sweat. Like, this is who this guy is. And sticking around on Substack for long enough will turn you into somebody that is essentially a Republican in Democratic in the guise of a Democrat. I don't know what to say. It's the Anna Kasparian effect.
Cares about, I hate trade. I want tariffs. I dislike immigrants.
Look at how much like admiration there is for the Republican Party. Look at how much admiration there is for Trump. Look at how much he wants to, at the same time, emulate Trump. But if you actually looked for a mirror image of Trump, this guy would be disgusted by that. This guy would call that a woke scold. This guy would call that a far left activist, right? There's no logical consistency in what he's saying other than he's been pulled to the right. He's been radicalized. And this institutional, kind of political expert is now being tapped by the likes of Pod Save America for look, give us the really good advice, right? And you know what advice he's going to give you? I mean, you've heard this, right? If you've been around the discourse, right? You have heard people say the left needs a Joe Rogan. The left needs a Joe Rogan, right? That's what they're missing. If they had somebody like Joe Rogan.
And I want to crack down on immigration. And he's got kind of this isolationist view of the world. But on stuff like, wanting to cut Medicare and Social Security, kind of Paul Ryan politics, he was like, yeah, I don't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to protect your Social Security. In terms of abortion, he flips.
Yeah, I mean, he's not.
He flip-flops back and forth all the time. And progressives have just got to get better at this, especially
at flip-flopping. They got to get better at flip-flopping. No, they got to get better at authenticity. Look, the thing that works for Joe Rogan, all right, I'll break it down for you. It's really simple. It's authenticity. He says what's on his mind. Now, sometimes that is brain rot, right? Sometimes Jamie has to be like, Joe, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, right? Sometimes that's bigoted as fuck. And sometimes it's surprisingly refreshing, like when he endorsed Bernie Sanders.
The activist wing of the party.
But he's authentic. Joe Rogan is himself. What these assholes are trying to do is suggest that the Democrats or the lefty media sphere make themselves more like Joe Rogan. In other words, make themselves less authentic. It just like it's galling how little that he actually gets.
There's kind of
how little he understands what makes Joe Rogan and his platform actually tick, right? And he's going to suggest something really odd in a second as far as who could be our left-wing Joe Rogan. I don't know. Maybe you, John. Maybe you, Favreau. Look, I'm not a big believer in the whole, the right-wingers love to call everything they don't like soy. All right? But there's a certain aspect of Favreau's personality that just does not match the likability, that you're going to see from a Joe Rogan. So it's
one more example.
Like, these people are doomed. And as long as the political left allows the institutional Democratic Party to run the show, they're going to drag us down with them. They are fucking doomed. All right. Their only answer to any political failure is to double down on the shit that didn't work. Kamala ran to the center. Kamala thumbed her nose at the base and embraced the Liz Cheneys, the Dick Cheneys, the George W. Bushes of the world. In other words, the losers who have no fucking aura. They've had the aura sucked out of them. They don't represent anybody. These are Republicans that used to have a constituency, but do not have a constituency in the post-Trump world. That is who they thought were going to win. Yeah, we'll get Liz Cheney, and it's going to pull this massive suburban Karen vote in for us, and we'll just make sure don't ever don't ever stand up for Palestinians, don't ever stand up for trans rights, don't ever stand up against police brutality, and just emulate the Republicans as much as you can. That's what everyone wants, right? Is a diet Republican Party. No, they can get the Republican Party if they want it. They can get the actual thing. They don't have to go for the diet, caffeine-free version.
Of this that I would share. There's a guy whose blog I really like. The blog is named Garbage Day, and it's written by Ryan Broderick. And he proposed a set of like, who could be the Democratic Joe Rogan, who could fill this spot. And just so you know, John, you were one of the potential nominees. I thought it was an interesting.
Him. Wait. Let me make sure that you can see this on. If you're watching me on. There you go. I don't know, chat. What do you think? Is this the Joe Rogan? Look, and I'm not trying to be mean here, all right? I feel like I said, like I want, Favreau to be better. I want, this guy. This is going to be the Joe Rogan. He doesn't understand Joe Rogan. If you think that guy will ever fucking substitute for Joe Rogan, you think Favreau can be that dude, I'm sorry, you don't understand what makes Rogan tick. And also, yeah, like I said, it's authenticity. So instead of trying to be Joe Rogan, Democrats, progressives should, I don't know, try being progressive? Try being real? Try selecting politicians who are real? Try selecting politicians who are not, empty shells for, for policy and slogans to be like poured into to fit the moment that are panel tested, and try being real.
List, especially because one of
like Bernie.
Ryan Broderick's favorite candidates was Sam Reich and the Dropout crew. And I think Ryan is really insightful in a lot of ways, but I don't think he really.
And do you see how much of this cancel culture discourse that this guy has like absorbed and taken to heart? Like how much, and this is such a dead discourse. Like he's like, I swear to God, this guy's like 6 years late to this, right? This kind of discussion about, there was this guy, a great comedian on the show, and he got canceled because they brought on a guest who was offensive to some people, and this is why the Democratic Party has to throw. We have to poll test everything, right? Every issue, and if something ever comes up where, oh yeah, the American people are against that, then you got to throw that group under the bus. That's the diagnosis. That's what they've learned from this election.
Is that Sam Reich and the Dropout crew could never be a progressive Joe Rogan because of what happened just 2 to 3 weeks ago. There was this incident where Dropout, if you're not familiar with them, is a sketch comedy site, and they've got several 100,000 paying subscribers.
But look, the analog to Joe Rogan on the left would be somebody that had a sketch comedy show. They invite, like, I don't know, somebody who's an advocate for Palestinians on. They get pushback from people who don't want to see that, and they say they giga-chat it, right? That's what he's missing. That's what he's missing, is that the one thing that maybe could be emulated, and I still hesitate to say emulated, because once you start emulating, you're not being authentic, you're not being real, and people pick up on that. People see that. People notice the lack of authenticity, right? But the one thing that Joe Rogan does is, when he is like he pushes back on pressure, right? Generally, like pressure, that one of his comics is too edgy or something like that, right? And that works for him. But the mirror image of that on the left is not. So what we need to do is like cancel all the far lefties, cancel anybody who's ever said, hey, maybe we need a ceasefire. Maybe we need to stop sending arms to Israel if they're going to be used to do human rights, like war crimes, right? Maybe we should cut that off, right? It's to embrace that person. Yeah.
They're very popular. They're growing. And so it's natural to think that they also wear their progressive politics on their sleeve. Like Sam Reich is actually the son of Robert Reich, the former Secretary of Labor, I think.
Yep.
And so it's natural to think, oh, maybe it's them. They're non-political, but they are like they show their views. But about 2 to 3 weeks ago, they brought somebody named Noah Grossman on one of their sketches, like a guest comedian, and they do that kind of thing a lot. And their progressive fan base realized very quickly, oh, Noah Grossman is a Zionist. And by Zionist, they meant that he had made one statement 6 years ago about how his great grandfather immigrated to Israel, like when Israel was founded in 1947, and he was proud of him. That was the extent of his Zionism. But I'm telling you that.
So look at what's going on here. This guy is complaining about progressive pearl clutchers while he's clutching his pearls about progressives.
About fan base tore itself apart. They're fighting on Twitter. There are great battles on subreddits. People started organizing boycotts, and Dropout had to kind of issue this like groveling statement.
Also, bro, I hate to break it to you, but you're too fucking online. Like I make my living online, okay? And I don't know about this shit. Yeah, I don't get myself involved with subreddits, okay? That's some sweaty shit from a sweaty guy. Anyway, chat, I don't want to like get hung up on this too much. I just wanted to show you that really quick, and I'll show you also that if we scroll down to here to the comment section, look at who has got the top comment. Who is the top comment chick here, right? So yeah, my comment was, I tried to make it short and sweet, right? That's probably why it got upvoted. Again, not a lot of upvotes, but this is their smaller channel. This is a 15.4K subscriber channel. So yeah, not too bad to get 76 upvotes on there. Sorry, but the Dems never had Rogan. Bernie did. Bernie, whose policies were far to the left of Hillary's. That's what he's missing. That's what he's missing. Bernie's not an emissary for the fucking rot that is the institutional Democratic Party. Bernie is an outsider. And that's why people like him. Bernie is authentic. And yeah, Bernie's able to reach out to people like Rogan, who he might, disagree with on a lot of it. But honestly, Kamala should have gone on Rogan. Kamala should have gone on Rogan. Rogan is actually really simple. There are a few issues that he will push back on. But other than that, he'll ask you questions, he'll give your opinion, and he'll nod. That's what Rogan does. That's Joe Rogan. He's a simple guy. He's not a terribly smart guy. He's not a terribly complex guy. Yeah, he does have certain issues, right? You can't, argue, you don't want to argue, trans women in sports. He'll fight you on that one, and if aliens exist or something like that. But other than that, Rogan's a fucking empty vessel, and he was there, if Kamala wanted to use him. Unfortunately, I guess the campaign just thought that there was too much risk. There was too much risk in him, showing Kamala in a bad light. Anyway, Bernie, whose politics were far to the left of Hillary's, and apparently those of John's guest. It's not about throwing people under the bus. Kamala did plenty of that. That's what their campaign was defined by. It's about, there we go, chat, authenticity. Okay, so enough glazing myself up, although it does show how flexible I am that I'm able to do that. Oh my God, what am I even saying? What am I even saying here? I want to check this out really quick.
Welcome back to Pod Save the World. I'm Tommy Vitor.
I'm Ben Rhodes.
So that sucked, huh?
Yeah, the election. So I'm trying to figure out what we got here. Post-election reactions, Trump's foreign policy picks. That's what I'm interested in. So we're going to talk about Trump's picks because we haven't done that yet. I get that for some of you, election coverage may not be exactly what you want to see right now. You might have seen too much of that. I gave a little breather. I covered drama for a few days, but we got to be back at it. Let's take a look at this really quick before we'll get back into more drama after this with the Ethan Klein stuff. So
on this stuff is the foreign policy staffing that's starting to happen. So as of Tuesday,
Harris was willing to work with Rogan, but Rogan wouldn't agree to what Harris team wanted. Yeah. So essentially, Natalie, Harris would have had to take some time out of her campaign in order to be on Rogan. Rogan did insist on doing the interview in Austin, right? Which would have been an imposition to the campaign. They offered instead to, I don't know what, fly Rogan out to a hotel room or something like that, and because Rogan is the one that's doing the platforming, he's the one with the power. He said, no, I will not accommodate you. It works the other. It's just like, think about Tim Pool with the Sam Cedar stuff, right? He offers Sam Cedar to come on and debate with him. Sam Cedar assumes it's going to be over Zoom since it's COVID. Tim Pool says, no, that's not how it works. Now, Tim Pool doesn't have the kind of influence that Joe Rogan does. So, but at the same time, he was firm on that, right? He didn't like budge and say, yeah, Sam, you can call in.
Tuesday afternoon, here's who has been leaked.
Rogan did reject our free vacation. That's true.
As filling up positions in a way that seems, all but confirmed.
Look, I'm not in. I'm not like, unlike some people, I'm not concentrating on blaming Kamala Harris as a candidate. Yes, she's not the candidate that I would have preferred. Most of the Democrats are not the candidate that I would have preferred. But in terms of, where I place the blame, it is mostly on the Democratic Party. It is mostly, I think that, with a different strategy, the Harris campaign could have won. And
in most cases. So Congresswoman Elise Stefanik.
Unfortunately, she had some really bad advice. And look, she took it. So on some level, yeah, the buck's got to stop with her, right? She's the one, she was the candidate. But she was also in kind of a tough spot in terms of being the sitting vice president to the Biden White House and having to, kind of do a little bit of a tightrope walk there.
Will be the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Florida Congressman and former Green Beret Mike Waltz will be National Security Advisor. Florida Senator and current Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Marco Rubio will likely be tapped to become Secretary of State. That's the one that's the most kind of hedged in the reporting so far. And then South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem is going to be Secretary of Homeland Security. RIP to any dogs that tried to cross.
Yeah, I was going to say Secretary of Animal Welfare.
Southern border. We don't know who will be Secretary of Defense, but we know it will not be Mike Pompeo, who got spiked via Trump social media post, as did Nikki Haley for any job in the administration period. And we know it won't be Senator Tom Cotton because Cotton pulled himself out of the running. So let's start with the big picture, and then we can go through these individuals one by one. I think the key through line here is loyalists and sycophants. Rubio is the one pick that surprised me the most. He is a neocon. He's a hawk. He's exactly the kind of person that the MAGA world says they hate, and you're seeing some of this play out on social media. There's some MAGA types that are very pissed about the Rubio pick, but Rubio also spent the last few years kissing Trump's ass at every occasion, including after he was passed over for the vice presidential nominee, which apparently Trump noticed. So here we are. I'm a little bit relieved that some of the worst haven't been named to jobs yet. People like Kash Patel, Rick Grinnell, Mike Flynn, who are like MAGA.
Yeah, just wait.
Crazy.
I mean, they did. What did the guy they named for Department of Defense? Like, this guy's got like white supremacist tattoos.
For lack of a better word. But I'm sure, that punch in the face will be coming. Waltz is not who I expected to be National Security Advisor. There seems to be some Florida favoritism happening, maybe that's like the Susie Wiles impact, the new chief of staff. But apparently Waltz has been close to Trump for a long time and was considered like a Trump whisperer in the first administration. As a whole, though, I mean, this group it tilts a little more hawkish and establishment Republican than I'd expected. I would say it's bad news for Ukraine, bad news for anyone who wants a humane immigration policy, bad news for Iran, because you have to think that given the assassination plot reporting and then the arrest that just happened, that Trump is going to want to fucking destroy them. And then Rubio and Waltz are really hawkish on China. Maybe that's good for Taiwan. This crew is terrible for the Palestinians. They will back whatever Israel wants. And then it just weirdly, I mean, you keep seeing these reports that Elon Musk, Donald Trump Jr., Tucker Carlson, and Rick Grinnell, and kind of like MAGA media types are playing an outsized role in personnel selections. So I don't know, maybe that means we'll see some real curveballs. But any kind of thematic takeaways from this crew so far for you?
I think the thematic takeaway, the main one is you have to compare these people to who was there in 2017 and put aside the 2 weeks that Mike Flynn was National Security Advisor before he got in trouble with the FBI. It was H.R. McMaster as National Security Advisor, Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State, and Jim Mattis as Secretary of Defense, and Nikki Haley at the UN. That was an incredibly conventional collection of traditional neocon-like Republicans. They were not people that were particularly close to Trump. He barely knew some of those people. I think didn't know some of those people at all before he appointed them. All of these people are Trump loyalists. Even Rubio. And by the way, we should say there's like a non-zero chance that he's going to humiliate Rubio by withdrawing.
It'd be so
but
funny.
I think we have to assume it's Rubio.
Yeah.
All of these people have repositioned themselves as first and foremost Trump loyalists. They're going to do what he says. They know going into the jobs more than was the case in 2017. That's why they're there. They know that they'll be fired within a period of weeks or months if they are crossing Trump on key things that he wants to do. So these are all people who sold their souls, and that's why they're getting these appointments. I had the same takeaways as you, and to put it into policy, annexation of the West Bank, very much on the table. None of these people have any problem with depopulating Gaza, annexing the West Bank. Confrontation with Iran could escalate. The only question is whether Trump's anti-war instincts moderate military action against Iran by either the U.S. or Israel. Then Russia, deep concern.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Trump's anti-war instincts, if you believe that that is a real thing, I've got a winged horse from North Korea to sell you, okay?
I mean, Rubio was against the last aid package to the Ukrainians. So he's totally reinvented himself into someone who is America first on the Ukraine war. This is all bad news to the Ukrainians. This suggests that he means what he said about cutting them off and getting to a peace deal, and we can talk about what that might actually mean. The China piece is interesting, though, because it's the one area where you're still kind of allowed to be a neocon. And so Waltz and Rubio have these incredibly hawkish views on China.
So hawkish. I mean,
yes.
We'll get into it more, but yes.
Well, yeah, and it suggests that we, prepare for a bumpy ride here. The tariffs are coming. The kind of confrontation with China is coming. This is the one place where these guys can be ideological, and so that's what I see is ratcheting up of tensions with China, along with all the other bad things that we've talked about. And yeah, you're right. It could be worse. I'm interested. You named the big three: Kash Patel, Rick Grenell, Mike Flynn. Those are the scary guys. CIA is still open. FBI is still open. DNI is still open. So all the intelligence jobs are still open. And while I'm glad that Kash Patel's not National Security Advisor and Rick Grenell is not the Secretary of State, if those guys are in charge of the intelligence community, that's scary.
I think it's scarier. I think it's scary in terms of when it comes to abuse. Like if you're Secretary of State and you're just a prick and an asshole and not qualified for the job, that's not good for U.S. interests abroad. But if you have control over the national security apparatus or intelligence collection or could somehow abuse that through the process.
Sassy Sassarai says, I keep seeing memes that blame the uncommitted movement for Kamala's loss, as if the uncommitted didn't give her a backhanded endorsement. Yeah. And she gave them a backhanded something else, right? There was a Palestinian speaker who was ready to speak at the DNC and to endorse Kamala Harris, but that was considered too controversial.
That's scary to me for, getting back to some of the old school abuses of the FBI, collecting on Americans, et cetera, et cetera.
And covert operations too. So the CIA has a huge bandwidth, right? And it's nothing we can talk about, but the reality is, people know the CIA can do things totally out of sight through covert operations. And so imagining somebody like Kash Patel being able to, or Rick Grenell, or Mike Flynn, or anybody like that, being able to do things totally in the shadows, which will also be the area that is most attractive to Elon Musk. That's deeply worrying. So maybe that people like Rubio are the front men for this operation, but that a lot of the dirty work could end up running through the intelligence community. That's certainly the pattern in American history. And so watching those appointments.
And who have they got for intelligence so far? Tulsi Gabbard?
For sure. So let's take through these one by one. We'll go a little faster with some of them than others. So Elise Stefanik, just manifestly unqualified for the job, but she's a Trump loyalist. She's a congresswoman from New York. I think she's 40 years old. Was a very normie moderate Republican until she reinvented herself as a MAGA fire breather. I think the question, I'm 100% sure she'll use this position to grandstand on behalf of Israel, like she did at the hearings with college presidents. The question I have is how aggressive Trump will be about going after various parts of the UN budget. The U.S. provides a ton of money to the UN. The UNRWA money for Gaza relief efforts, that's probably going to be zeroed out right away. I wonder what will happen to the World Food Program, the World Health Organization. There's a lot of pieces of this, and it just depends on how aggressive Trump decides to be.
Yeah, you're right there. The platform she's going to use is going to be about Israel. She made her name.
Somebody in my Twitch chat whose name I can't pronounce is saying it's just a bunch of letters. I can't tell how I'm supposed to say that, but there weren't any new wars under Trump's first administration. I would caution you. Do not allow yourself to be programmed, okay, by talking points, of which that is one. Yeah, no, Trump just lit the fuse on Gaza, right? Trump just continued a forever war in Afghanistan, getting more people killed in that conflict than Biden did. Trump just did an act of war against Iran, blew up a nuclear deal. You want me to go on? Allowed for the annexation of the Golan Heights, the movement of the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, motherfucker lit the fuse. And you're like, well, he didn't start any new wars. Well, look at Biden. No, he just droned people in fucking Yemen. No, he didn't start any new wars, though. See, that's a talking point. And when you examine it and you actually look at the substance of Trump's foreign policy, you see that it's like the best thing that you can say. It's like taking a cereal that's got like 5 possible carcinogens in it and saying, well, it's fat-free, though. There's no fat in the cereal. It's a fat-free cereal. You know, it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter.
In some circles with these anti-Semitism.
You literally just changing the literally just sleight of hand. And when you just slurp up all these talking points, you're getting played by a con man from the fucking 70s who studied under Roy Cohn.
He's attacking college presidents. She'll basically attack the UN the same way she attacked the college presidents. You know, everybody's anti-Semite, but I also worry about getting under
abandon the Kurds,
kind of crippling the U.S. contributions to the UN system. I think we can expect that. But I don't think that this is a person, Lee Stefanik, who's going to be a big player. It's frankly interesting to me that Republican UN nominees tend to get more attention. You know, nobody was a tea leaf reading Linda Thomas Greenfield. You know, and that's not a knock on her. It's just, this is someone who's kind of at the far end of American foreign policy, largely a spokesperson. And so, you know, she's a Trumpy.
Anyway.
Call them all anti-Semites and probably cut funds to things that are really important to people's lives. And that's what we shouldn't lose sight of. I mean, the question for the UN system is, can they make up some of that money in Europe and other places?
Yeah. So Waltz is a 50-year-old retired Green Beret. He's a combat vet turned Republican rep from Florida. As we mentioned, he's a longtime China hawk. He also has had policy jobs at the Department of Defense in the White House. So he's had a lot of experience. He was described to Politico as a Trump.
You know, sadly, being hawkish on China is something that the Democrats and the Republicans seem to agree on.
Defense policy whisperer. On specific sort of areas, he is opposed to sending more money to Ukraine. He wrote, quote, "The era of Ukraine's blank check from Congress is over." He had a tweet about Taiwan where he said, "We must learn from Ukraine by addressing the threat of the CCP and arming Taiwan now before it's too late. That's why I asked state and DoD officials for a timeline and specifics on how we plan to bolster Taiwan's self-defense capabilities." So again, he's very focused on Taiwan and all things China. He one time said that he wants to let Israel finish the job in defeating Hamas. He supports maximum pressure on Iran.
And this is something that Trump echoed as well, right?
At one point, he suggested that the U.S. military should have a bigger role in battling Mexican cartels. Ben, we
were... So yeah, war with Mexico? What's not to like? LLXM1?
Joking around about AUKUS a couple weeks ago, which is that, you know, U.S.-Australia submarine deal.
No, Trump's the peace candidate, right? Just wants to declare war on Mexico.
In an op-ed he wrote, "Mr. Biden and Ms. Harris have taken some positive steps on China, such as strengthening export controls and establishing AUKUS." So he's apparently an AUKUS fan. Shout out Australia. So the last thing on this, so Ben,
yeah, AUKUS is a what is it like? It's like a treaty similar to NATO, but in the South Pacific.
On NPR, Waltz talked about how he thinks Trump could bring Putin to the negotiating table with Ukraine. Here's an excerpt from that.
I think it's perfectly reasonable that this is going to come to some type of diplomatic resolution. And first and foremost, you would enforce the actual energy sanctions on Russia. Russia is essentially a gas station with nukes. Putin is selling more oil and gas now than he did pre-war through China and Russia. And you couple that with unleashing our energy, lifting our LNG ban, and his economy and his war machine will dry up very quickly. I just spoke with the Speaker of the Parliament of Lithuania. Mm-hmm. She buys 85% of their oil and gas from Texas and Louisiana. She said, "What do you want me to do? Go back to buying from Russia?" Because we've constrained our energy supply. So I think that will get Putin to the table.
Now we're the magical thinking part of.
Yeah, that's bullshit. The Biden's drilled harder than anyone. The United States is a net exporter. They're maybe the biggest on the world stage at the moment.
Yes.
Of the administration, where there's just an easy answer sitting there on the table for how to get Putin to
it's another situation in which both parties have bad policies.
Putin to the table. I don't know, a big picture. What do you think about Waltz and what do you expect from him?
You covered it well. I think
Trump literally playing with the mother of all bombs, with the largest conventional ordnance in the United States arsenal for fun, because he wanted to see a bomb explode in Afghanistan.
There's a lot of magical thinking in that. Let's just take what he said. Israel should finish the job fast. Well, Bibi Netanyahu might not be interested in finishing the job fast. And by the way, what does it mean to finish the job? Who's in charge of Gaza? What happens to the people there? What happens in the West Bank? He talks about using energy sanctions to cripple Russia. My God, we've heard this for years. The Russians have figured out how to avoid our sanctions. There's not some magic wand that the Trump people can wave that's going to make these sanctions somehow bring the war to the end. And I think what they're in for is the reality that Putin and Netanyahu may be more Trump friendly and happy that he's in there. But why wouldn't they press on? Why wouldn't Putin try to keep taking more Ukrainian territory? Why would he stop now when he has the likelihood of the U.S. administration cutting the Ukrainians off and not backing them up, and the kind of vibe that he's on offense. So I think their talking points about ending all these things quickly are going to run into a harsh reality that the Middle East and Ukraine are unlikely to end anytime soon, and they're likely to get worse for the Ukrainians, because that's one thing where Waltz has been very clear. He's kind of JD Vance pilled on cutting off assistance there and trying to kind of figure out a tough guy talking point on sanctions that's not going to work. This China piece is consistently interesting, though, because again, it suggests that the U.S. is America first kind of everywhere except.
Anyway, let's take a look at some of the other nominations we've got.
I'm Dan Pfeiffer.
On today's show, Donald Trump's cabinet picks go from mildly amusing to terrifying. Co-chair Howard Lutnick, if Kennedy would be in charge of health and human services, his answer, of course not. What he actually meant by that is, of course.
It's easy to misspeak on live television.
Yeah, no, it was just missing a word there. Kennedy falsely believes that childhood vaccines cause autism, has spread misinformation about COVID and COVID vaccines, and has already pledged to remove fluoride from drinking
So
water.
we're talking about RFK Jr. here.
Former acting director of the CDC, Dr. Richard Besser, told NBC that RFK Jr. as HHS secretary would, quote, imperil the health of people across the country. Though Kennedy does have one unlikely supporter, Jared Polis, the Democratic governor of Colorado, who said he's excited by the news and thinks Kennedy will help make America healthy again by shaking up HHS and FDA.
Look, I wish that was the truth. And there are some things as far as Kennedy's, stances on, for instance, he's critical of the revolving door of lobbyists and at the ag department, at the FDA, et cetera, right? And that's a real thing, but that's not something that's going to be curtailed under Trump. Remember, Trump is not draining the swamp. He is the swamp. He exists in the swamp. He wants the swamp. Trump doesn't want to add regulations to make America's food supply safer. He wants to take away regulations to make corporate profits larger. So yeah, any good instincts that RFK Jr. might have, and I will admit that there's probably some, are going to be curtailed, and only the most fucked up aspects of his policy are going to be implemented. Policies like going after vaccines. Guy has apparently never seen a vaccine he doesn't hate.
What do you think's going on there?
Literally comes up to parents on when he's on the trail and saying, "That's a nice baby you've got there. Better not get it vaccinated. Better not vaccinate that baby."
What's your
Well,
general,
I have some thoughts.
reaction? Okay, first, general reaction to RFK Jr. as our next Health and Human Services Secretary.
Do I think there's a problem and a potential danger with the top healthcare official in the federal government being someone who sows conspiracy theories about vaccines? Yes, I think that is deeply dangerous. And if RFK Jr. is confirmed or ends up in the position in one way or another, I think that will lead to more measles, more smallpox, more whooping cough, and all the other things that vaccines have been keeping Americans safe for, because now you have a very famous, very prominent former Democrat Trump administration official spreading those lies from a position of great power and authority. So I think that's deeply, deeply dangerous. I think Polis's statement is very interesting. People are very, very mad about it. And he did a follow-up tweet where he made the point that what RFK Jr. says about vaccines is scientifically, has been proven false scientifically. It is absolutely not true and is deeply dangerous. But if we as Democrats say we follow the science, then some of the other things that he is talking about, like the dangers from factory farming, of pesticides.
There we go.
In chemicals, if you follow the science, there's also ways.
Like, look, it's not that, I'm like anti the use of pesticides or that I'm like naive and Pollyannish and think that like we could, move to like a all organic a food system, right? I've always said that if you got the choice between eating organic, if your choice is between not eating vegetables at all because you can't afford like organic, or you can't afford pesticide free stuff, and eating vegetables that are conventional, go with the conventional ones, right? But at the same time, we've got too much industry capture when it comes to regulation, and they're not regulating enough, right? And you've got like you've got things like, look, I'm not like, again, another example, right? I am not anti the study and the use of genetically modified organisms. However, when the intent of that genetic modification is to make the crops tolerant to more pesticides, that is a move that's very much in favor of industry and at the expense of the American consumer, right? So I will grant that possibly there are issues. I don't know enough about RFK's ideas to absolutely say that there's nothing that he would want to propose that's good. What I'm saying is that the stuff that he would be able to propose, the stuff that he would be able to implement, in other words, the stuff that Trump would let him get away with,
so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communists
are not going to be issues where he wants to add more regulation, right? Trump and his administration and the Republican Party are fundamentally opposed to the adding of regulations on business,
in which we should reform our government there. And this is a big thing, and I'm sure it's big in Colorado. It is big where we live here in California. There is a lot of skepticism about big pharma, big food companies, what huge greedy corporations are feeding our children. And RFK has been sitting in this wellness space for a very long time talking about these things. I've said this on this podcast before. This is something my wife brings up all the time. She follows a lot of influencers on Instagram. She has constantly fed people in the wellness space who are RFK adjacent and have become MAGA adjacent because of RFK's association with Trump.
Yeah, if you want to know more about what he's talking about there, read Naomi Klein's book, Doppelganger. She talks about the way that the wellness movement, if you go back like 10 years ago, if you go back like 10 years ago, you're going to find a wellness movement that is comprised of mostly progressive people, right? Unfortunately, you're also going to find some conspiracy theorists that have you kind of burrow into the wellness movement. And through that burrowing into the wellness movement, that gave QAnon a place to dig in as well. And essentially, that whole sphere of thought has been largely captured by conspiracy theorists, by right-wing conspiracy theorists, right? It's become a pipeline to take crunchy organic food eating hippies and turn them into MAGA conspiracy QAnon weirdos.
And so the thing I think about this is it's very dangerous. We should
we should watch that sometime. Video about crunchy mom to MAGA pipeline.
We can to stop them. We have to be careful about talking specifically.
Like Bronze Age pervert talking about seed oils being the ultimate evil, being the ultimate detriment to Americans' health.
Vaccine stuff, and not making ourselves the defenders of big pharma.
Oh my God, RFK doesn't believe that AIDS is real. That's great. Yeah, hey, similar to Marianne Williamson, right? Didn't she have some similar take?
Food, factory farms, and all of those other things. I think that's what Polis was trying to get at, and he has a bit of a point there.
I fucking love Big Pharma. What are you talking about?
He's got a bit of a point, but this is not the time, Polis. This is not the time to be glazing up Mr. Brainworm.
This is. I'm going to get to this at the end, but this is.
I still have smoke for Jared Polis. I don't care if look. I can grant that, a broken clock is right twice a day, but
see that giant pit we're about to jump right back into. That's where we're headed.
I think the reason that this is particularly combustible is, to your point, one result.
He said that school shootings are caused by antidepressants. God.
Result of the pandemic, one of fucking many, is that trust in public health institutions has fallen by a lot, not just among Republicans. And we don't have to go into why that is now, because you could spend a whole episode.
I honestly think that Jon Favreau's off a little bit here. This is the time where you saw a lot of loss in faith, but that was already that was already in the works, right? The loss of faith in public health was already, it had already started before the pandemic. It just got
on it, but we had a fast-moving, mutating, changing virus, and the CDC and our public health agencies weren't always as nimble as they could have been, and also maybe even the best-staffed agencies that made no mistakes still would have appeared to be changing their minds all the time because the virus kept changing, right? And you had vaccine mandates and not vaccine mandates and masks and this, and then there's this variant and this variant, right? So trust in public health institutions has gone down, right? So into that steps RFK Jr., who has been peddling unfounded conspiracies and misinformation about public health for a long time. And some of the things he said about Big Pharma, absolutely true. Some of the things he said about, environmental pollution and big corporations polluting the environment, absolutely true. The problem with him is, he doesn't necessarily follow the science at all.
No.
He and when the science tells him something that he doesn't want to hear, that flies against his own preconceived notions, his own beliefs, his own theories, he just ignores it, right? He has embraced raw milk. FDA is saying that drinking it is risky, particularly amid a current bird flu epidemic among dairy cows. But he says go for it. He's also said he's going to go say to the National Institute of Health scientists, we have the best, the scientists at the NIH are the best in the world. They have discovered some of the best cures to disease and scientific and medical innovations in the world. And he's going to say, he said he's going to say to them, this was just recently, thank you for your public service. We're going to give infectious disease a break for about 8 years. It's like, yeah, wouldn't we all love to give infectious disease a break? But it's not going to give us a break, so we might as well keep studying it and not lay off a bunch of scientists at the NIH. In his book,
like some of this discussion, and I'm kind of going back to the subject that we started on. Some of this discussion about from the neo-libs blaming the progressives in the party for Kamala's loss. It includes stuff like, what about those people that are still wearing masks? What are you doing, silly? Sweaty? What are you doing, Sweaty? The pandemic's over. Oh my God. Oh my, that's a brain broken take right there. Look, just because something is conventional wisdom, and just because something, conventional wisdom buoyed in a lot of ways by, the Biden administration's policy. There's another failure of the Biden administration. Prioritizing the feeling of getting back to normalcy over public health.
His book that he wrote in 2021, he claimed in the book that Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates are members of a vaccine cartel trying to kill patients by denying them hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin.
Literally, if you wore a mask, right, in the past 2 years, you're the reason that Kamala lost.
He also argued that this cartel secretly funded doctors to produce fraudulent studies showing that the drugs were ineffective against COVID, and that they did so in order to orchestrate global lockdowns and accelerate the construction of 5G cellular networks, which of course are bad. That was from The Atlantic. Someone had read his book, thankfully, so we didn't have to. I just, it's like, but I take your point, and that I think that what we can't do is just wave him away as a nut, because for a lot of people, they're just hearing about him for the first time, or they don't know all of his theories. And so I think when you're talking about RFK Jr. to your friends, you kind of have to go into what he's done. We talked about this when Lutnick first said, he might or might not run HHS, and I was telling about the measles outbreak he helped cause.
In Samoa, yes.
In Samoa.
He personally caused a measles outbreak that cost more than 80 lives.
Yeah, and everyone can go read it and see for yourself. It's like, if he wasn't singularly responsible, he certainly helped out. He lifted up some of the people, the anti-vaxxers in Samoa, who were trying to stop these kids from getting vaccinated, and a bunch died. So, look, it's the facts are all out there. Just, go do your own research, as RFK Jr. might say.
Yeah. I mean, I think the part you just read from his book is that he really is sort of a maestro at spinning a conspiracy theory, taking legitimate concerns that people have and real questions that are worth asking, and then taking that one step further into a very dangerous, very incorrect, and very unscientific set of solutions that is where he has taken us. But what we have to be able to address why his solutions are wrong without seeming like we don't share some of the same concerns about pollution and food quality and pesticides and chemicals in this country.
It's a big day for the brainworm, huh?
Yeah, I mean, this is yes, that's exactly right.
Big day for I also really enjoyed in the New York Times story about him getting Trump announcing him. There's just casually a sentence there that says, in addition to his outside the mainstream views about medicine and health, he has been associated with a number of peculiar activities, like dumping a dead bear in Central Park and supposedly decapitating a whale. What are we doing?
Big day for road.
Look, I'm sorry, I can't laugh at that anymore. I made a video about that. I think it's one of my funnier videos, right? The video of him explaining the bear incident to Roseanne Barr. But this dude's going to be Health and Human Services Secretary.
Kill here in America.
What are we doing?
I'm sorry. I think I've laughed all my laughs on.
Moving on to two people who Trump wants to put in charge of the U.S. military and the nation's secrets. And
I guess you can count on RFK Jr. if he does get appointed to be the source of more weird scandals, more weird news for the Trump administration.
Agencies, Pete Hegseth and Tulsi.
It's hard to laugh. It's easy to laugh at. People like that are out of power. It's not. It's not as funny when they are in power.
The co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, and an Army vet who loves to criticize today's allegedly woke military. He also said as recently as last week, quote, "I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles." A reminder that Trump's team is also reportedly drawing up an executive order so that Trump can purge the military of generals he doesn't like or that he thinks are too woke. I don't know.
You know about the woke generals, right? That's the problem with the Army. It's like the generals are woke. The problem with the fact that crime statistics aren't showing a rise in crime, but are rather showing a decrease in crime, particularly violent crimes. That's because the FBI and the cops are woke.
Call me crazy. I feel like a weekend cable TV host might not be qualified to run a department of 2 million people. But what do I know? I'm just a.
Oh, this is a Fox News dude. This DOD nominee.
a defender of institutions.
You're just a weekday podcast host.
What do you think about Pete Hegseth?
For years now, going back to 2016, I've been making a pretty unfunny joke about how Trump's cabinet picks, staff picks would be just dregs of the Fox News green room. Well, joke's on me, people, because now he's in charge of the military.
Now he's in charge of the military. It's you can imagine that Defense Department officials, not just Biden appointees, but people who've worked at the Pentagon for years and years, again, career officials, are sort of terrified by this. And again, all these nominees fit in different categories. Some of them are crazy. Some of them are just they're going to carry out Trump's revenge wishes, and then some of them are just like most of them actually have no experience for the actual job or qualifications for the job that they're being nominated for. I think this is where Pete Hegseth comes into play. Like the defense.
Well, and look, it had to happen at some point. Look, the first Trump administration had what we call guardrails, right? That Trump didn't know how Washington worked, so he had to rely on people who did to tell him what to do. And because of that, you didn't have this kind of, like, in other words, like, Trump is phenomenally unqualified to be president, right? Trump is the only reason that Trump was able to run for president is because of the brain rot of American capitalist ideals that say, business owners, bosses, corporations, CEOs, these are the people with the most brain power. The country should be run more like a business. So if we had a successful businessman, which Trump is not, then we would have a more successful country because, right, they think it's a company, and look, it could be. It could. You don't want that. You don't want companies. You don't want corporations running more of your life. But at the same time, you had institutional Republican Party people who at least Republican Party people. Yeah. You had institutional people who would at least make sure that the candidates for office were somewhat qualified, right? Now that you've got a second Trump administration where he feels burned by the guardrails, where he feels like, the people that were put in charge of making sure that shit didn't crash and burn in his first term, were getting in the way of him being able to, shoot protesters in the street and stuff like that, right? You're going to have more people nominated for positions that they've got no business being in, but it sounds like a good idea to Trump.
Big department. That's one of the biggest, if not the biggest.
It is the biggest, right? And it is a massive management challenge. Put aside, he obviously served in the military, he's a very decorated veteran, but running the department is very different. And up until this point, his main role in life is to be Steve Doocy's understudy, right? So it's like,
if that doesn't prepare you to run DOD, I don't know what does.
The fact that he's the Fox and Friends weekend anchor is just so fucking funny. Like Fox and Friends anchor would be funny, but Fox and Friends weekend is just so much funnier. It's not funny per se because that guy's might be in charge of our military, and his confirmation prospects went through the roof with RFK Jr. and Matt Gaetz. The people are going to be lining up to vote for Pete Hegseth now because if they have to vote against one of these other two people.
So then there's Tulsi.
This is what I was saying, is that some of the weirdo nominees that Trump is making, like Matt Gaetz, like people that might not actually get approved, right? It kind of makes it more likely that his other suspect choices will get approved.
Gabbard. So she started off as a Democratic congresswoman from Hawaii before going full MAGA, particularly during this campaign. During her long political journey over the last decade, she developed sort of strange sympathetic views towards Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad and Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, both of whom have committed crimes against humanity by slaughtering thousands of their own people. She met with Assad, went to
secret
trip to Syria during the Obama administration while Assad was again slaughtering his own people, and she just decided to have a meeting with him. Didn't tell anyone, just a meeting. Then she said he's not our enemy. She defended Putin's invasion of Ukraine. She even opposed U.S. sanctions on Putin. Putin, again, killed thousands of Ukrainians, abducted 20,000 Ukrainian children in this war. The war's still going. Didn't want sanctions on Putin. How on earth does this person get a job as the director of national intelligence?
She ran for the Democratic presidential nomination 4 years ago.
I know.
Never served on the Intelligence Committee, and is now Donald Trump's nominee to be charged.
So look, I want to point out something about Tulsi Gabbard, about Andrew Yang, and about RFK. These are three people that were essentially moles. The Republicans talk about rhinos. They talk about people that are Republican in name only. That's the name that they have for, non-MAGA Republicans now. But with these three candidates, you are talking about right-wing people with right-wing allegiances that ran for the Democratic Party and just fucking gaslit the fuck out of it. I mean, Andrew Yang's a fucking libertarian. Tulsi Gabbard is, super right wing on a number of social issues, right? And RFK Jr. is a fucking. RFK Jr. is unhinged. And yeah, ultimately, right wing. Far right, I'd say, if you look into his weird anti-Semitic shit. And with the exception of RFK Jr., I'm not sure. Like, look, what I'm saying is that if the Democratic Party doesn't have more resistance to a candidate like that, you could end up with both parties being sort of in the pocket for MAGA.
National intelligence. What a journey. What a fast and tumultuous journey to where she is.
I mean, I'm sure Ben and Tommy will go get into detail about all of this and why it's dangerous on Pod Save the World. But, I was just reading the Politico story about it. There's like Western intel officials from other countries telling Politico, like, you know what, other countries, including our allies, like may not want to share intelligence with us anymore. Like as we're trying, and we need that intelligence to like prevent terrorist attacks and other things. And, if they can't trust that, like, who the fuck is Tulsi Gabbard? Just like freelancing on her own, meeting with dictators.
So yeah, the idea being that Tulsi Gabbard is very likely a foreign agent. The sharing of security is something that allies do with each other quite often. They're not going to want to do that if they've got somebody like leading one of the departments that is.
And now she's Trump's pal, who's going to be the director of national intelligence, despite not having any experience. What?
I mean, just to put in perspective the importance of this position, the director of national intelligence was a position created after 9/11 when all of our separate intelligence agencies and intelligence we were getting from the CIA, from Defense Department, from the FBI were not brought together, which allowed 9/11 to happen. So we created this position. This is a serious position that is supposed to manage all these various intelligence agencies, bring them together, and make sure that we are getting the best information to protect the United States homeland from terrorism and to understand what's happening abroad. And we've handed that to someone with no experience who was seemingly just a pick to troll the people that Donald Trump hates the most in the intelligence agencies.
Yeah,
like it is like that is the theme through all of these. Right, like he picked Marco Rubio for whatever reason to be at State, and he picked the random New York former Congressman Lee Zeldin at EPA. But these are little MAGA hand grenades to roll into the parts of the deep state, quote unquote deep state that he hates the most, to piss people off the most, to render these agencies unfunctionable.
Well, I was going to say, in the first term, you could look at some of his appointments and think that person's a real Yahoo, but there's an entire agency, a lot of career officials, and maybe that person doesn't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about earlier about the guardrails. Now, I will say that, when you're talking about intelligence, when you're talking about like the military industrial complex, I don't have a lot of faith in the people that are already in there. I don't have a lot of faith in like, the people occupying those offices like under a Democratic administration. So
there's an agency full of people who do know what they're doing, and they will try to work with this person and and maybe help them succeed, because we all want the government to succeed, right? Like we want.
Wait, was Tulsi raised by a cult? Is that true?
We want all these agencies to do the job that they're supposed to do. This time around, it's different because Trump and his team have been making plans to try to fire not only the political appointees, get rid of the political appointees at all these agencies, but the career officials. And either they fire some of these career officials, or some of these career officials might leave because they don't want to stick around for this. And then you're right. Then you just have chaos, and you have a bunch of agencies that don't have the people they need to actually just perform their basic functions. And that to me is a real concern, aside from just the character and qualifications of the people who will lead them.
I wrote about the Gates and Tulsi Gabbard appointments in Message Box this morning, and which caused me to go back and look at all of Trump's first set of cabinet appointees. And it was his approach was very different. He was clearly trying back in 2017, trying to send a signal to the Republican establishment that he was a serious person, right? Like Rex Tillerson was the CEO of Exxon. Like obviously he was not a foreign diplomat, but he was a serious person, right? Jim Mattis at Defense.
Till he was fired on the toilet.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Secretary of ExxonMobil, or like CEO of ExxonMobil, right? That's our serious guy.
I mean, no, it did not end well.
That's a serious. I mean, this sort of tells you the bias of the pod johns here, right? That like, well, Rex Tillerson, CEO of ExxonMobil. That's okay.
Kelly, former general at Homeland Security. Like they were.
That being said, yeah, he was one of the people that would be referred to guardrails on Trump, and that he had a vested interest in not letting shit get too far off the rails. But Jesus Christ, that's like
not good at their jobs. Most of them didn't last very long, but they were at least people who, on paper, for the most part, were qualified for this job. You were swinging in the exact opposite direction here. He's specifically picking people who are not qualified for the jobs, who will likely go in there and really fuck shit up, right? That seems to be his plan.
Pod Save America is brought to you by Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol. Let's face it, after a night with drinks.
All right, so we got one more. nomination that we want to take a look at. This is Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who have been nominated to lead the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency Commission.
For last,
Yes.
Now, we don't know how this is going to operate yet, right? There's some people that think that that maybe Trump is just kind of sick of Musk, that Musk has been, a little bossy and it's not appreciated by Trump, that maybe Musk has taken too much of the spotlight, and that the DOGE is like a meaningless commission for Trump to just kind of dump him at to make him feel important. And there's some people that say that this is going to have a lot of effect on how the government runs under Trump, or even still look at Trump as being beholden to Musk. It's hard to say exactly how this will shake out.
That's for last, because I do think of all the shit that we talked about, the DOGE Commission might present the best opportunity for Democrats here, because DOGE,
Best opportunity for Democrats? What?
Department of Government Efficiency, also the name of a fucking Bitcoin that Elon Musk has,
Also the name of a meme?
or whatever started. I don't know what the fuck you do. I don't know how to talk about that. Anyway, so Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk running the Department of Government Efficiency, not really a government department, but something they're providing outside advice for. I thought originally it was just like this blue ribbon commission, and they could go like, I made this joke. It's like the MAGA Simpson Bowles Commission. I made this joke to Max on offline, so people will hear it on Sunday too, and I said, the only people who will be laughing at this.
So I just really wonder, right? The Simpson Bowles Commission, if you're not familiar, was two old dudes from the Senate who had a plan to take probably the best thing that Democrats had done policy-wise, like one of the most important linchpins of the New Deal, and compromise it and sell it out and reform Social Security in a way that benefits finance rather than in a way that benefits people who need to access and use Social Security. So there's a thing that was established in the 1980s. It's called the Social Security Trust Fund. If you watch the Majority Report, Sam Cedar talks about this all the time. It's essentially able to pay out all benefits up until, I don't know, like what is it, like several years in the future, right? And even after that, it pays out like 85% of the benefits. Now, you don't want the program to get to the point where it's cutting its benefits, right? Because people, old people need Social Security. They probably need more Social Security than what they're getting. Right? So the proper way to reform this would be to raise the cap, would be to require more contributions from wealthier people who are capped. In other words, they're only the first, $200,000 of their income is subject to the Social Security tax, and then after that, the rest of their income doesn't get touched, right? If you raised the cap, if you lifted the cap, you would have no problem. The issue is essentially a demographic one. The baby boom generation is really large. They're going to be retiring. The subsequent generations are not as large, so you don't have enough, as many workers as you have, retirees. And, at some point, it does run into some problems. Not as big as people are describing, right? It's not as cataclysmic. And Sam always makes this point, as people, imply, and in a way that's easily fixable. But the fix that we want is a fix that the wealthy don't want. And so that's the issue. Now, the Simpson Bowles Commission would have essentially, solved the problem off the backs of future retirees. It's a bad deal. It's a bad thing. And this was called the Grand Bargain. And Obama was really proud of the Grand Bargain because it showed he was above partisan politics. It showed that he could reach across the aisle and work with Republicans to achieve something that the chattering class was going to find was going to think was really great. And it didn't happen because the Republicans didn't want to give Obama that W. It would have been something that he would have been talked about in kind words by the David Brookses of the world, he would have secured his legacy in that way, right? So it's a really, it's essentially Obama being willing to sell future retirees out. What they're making a joke about the Simpson Bowles Commission, and John Favreau was part of the administration that tried to sell Americans out on that. That's a joke I don't find funny. Pod Save America.
Are Dan Pfeiffer and Ben Rhodes? Big Tommy?
I'm laughing on the outside. I'm crying on the inside out of some PTSD from being in the White House with the Simpson Bowles, and sadness for you personally for having made that joke.
Yeah, no, you should have.
You're self-aware about it, so I appreciate that.
It's very pathetic of me.
Oh God, do we need to cover the Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski thing?
Anyway, so some blue. They keep them busy. They identify all these cuts, and then of course you have to bring it to Congress, and Congress is like, okay, fuck off, whatever. But the Washington
I'll see if we've got time for that today.
Is preparing to try a novel strategy for adopting the Doge's recommendations, even if Congress does not. There's some 1974 Act, Impoundment Act, or whatever, where the White House thinks, or the Trump people think, that the president is able to say, oh, well, Congress decided that we have to spend this money, but we don't actually have to spend the money that Congress appropriates. Screw them. And basically, the power of the purse is not with Congress, but with Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Here's Vivek Ramaswamy previewing its mandate.
We have a once-in-a-generation mandate right now. The American people have voted for drastic reform of the government, and our federal government is broken. It's no secret that it is a fourth branch of government. Elon's solving major problems.
So now he's saying a mandate. A mandate is more like what you'd see, I hate to say this, right? But in terms of an electoral mandate, if you look at the wins that Reagan had over Carter, the wins that Reagan had over Mondale, and the win that George H.W. Bush had over Dukakis, right? Those are mandates. Those are times where you look at the electoral map and you'll see like only one or two states as being blue and the rest of the map is red. It's a overwhelming victory, right? What Donald Trump had was not actually an overwhelming victory. There's a lot of red on that map, and he did run the table as far as the swing states. However, the margins in those swing states were still pretty small, and the overall margin wasn't that big either. So yeah, no, it's not a mandate. They'll try to gaslight you that it is because they want to be able to do more stuff. And the Democrats, it's funny. The Republicans always overestimate their mandate, the political capital that they have in order to make drastic changes, right, and feel entitled to do so, whereas the Democrats will always underestimate their mandate.
I came from the world of biology. What we're solving here now is not a natural problem. This is a man-made problem, and when you have a man-made problem, you better darn well have a man-made solution.
Oh, I forgot that his voice is going to be back. Ooh. So Elon Musk had said, I think we can cut $2 trillion from the federal government. It's a $6.5 trillion budget.
And he also said that there would be like a time of a lot of pain, right? So he's basically implied that he's going to cut into the American budget enough to actually hurt the economy, to hurt the well-being of working people. But that's just a necessary thing that we need to go through.
We can cut $2 trillion from the federal budget.
This did not get picked up. This did not get talked about by the media.
Cutting Medicare, Social Security, health programs, retirement programs, education programs, programs that people rely on. So I don't know. It seems like if they try to do that, feels like that's something that could be unpopular.
Yeah, I think the way we have to approach this very strategically. Like you and I look at this, and a lot of people listening look at this, and it's like, here are two fucking MAGA clowns with a fake job, just running through the government trying to make some proposals. And the way a lot of the country will approach this is, here are two pretty successful business people looking at a ineffectual and waste-ridden government.
And by the way, a lot of ways to get rid of in the government. Like
that's the point.
Barack Obama was obsessed with this and did not get as far as he wanted to. No. He wanted to.
Yeah, they're not going to be going for. So like Barack Obama was obsessed with this. Barack Obama's initial proposals for the Obamacare would have maybe given a little bit more savings in terms of medical costs. In other words, the medical industry is not only a commodification of a basic need of human beings, right? Which is medical care. It's also a hugely wasteful one, in which unjustifiable profits are taken by corporations, right? And Obama might have had some design originally in his original proposals on curtailing the cost, right? Which a lot of the cost is just upcharging. It's literally just profit and fluff, right? He abandoned anything that would actually affect, price meaningfully really quickly, because he thought he needed to have the insurance industry, the medical industry on board for the plan. He'd seen what happened under the attempted reforming of the insurance and medical system under Clinton, and he didn't want to, have his signature policy torpedoed in that way. So yeah, he let go of that really quickly.
There are multiple.
I would not expect, though, for Elon Musk to be cutting unnecessary expense out of government budgets where it comes out of a corporation's profits, right? That you're not going to see, because Elon Musk, like half of his business is literally taking government money.
Proposals to combine a couple departments. I think we're going to combine commerce and something else.
SBA. You lose your cabinet seat, Small Business Administration. Yes.
And here's the point that
it wouldn't be about cutting government spending. It would be about using monetary policy to induce economic shock to discipline labor. Yeah, no doubt.
No. We did enough of that during the State of the Union. Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they have this point, which is you go into government, and we tried to do this. You try to combine agencies, and suddenly everyone at the agencies and the secretaries, the cabinet officials in those agencies are like, absolutely not. You can't. Why can't we combine them? Why can't we get rid of all this? Because, and they give you a blizzard of words that don't really, they're not a compelling argument, but it's just like the bureaucracy just really does make it hard to reform government. So that is true.
This idea is going to be pretty popular. It is like the scene from Dave, and he brings his accountant in to work on the federal budget. It is people it makes sense to do it. So the way we should approach it as Democrats is we should agree that there is too much waste in government. We should look for places.
Jesus Christ, Pod Johns.
To make it more efficient and work better and make us better stewards of taxpayer dollars. We should absolutely do that. And then we should say, if these guys come up with good ideas, we're open to listen to them, because we agree government should be more efficient and we should save money. Let's see their proposals. Let's make them put their cards on the table. What is the $2 trillion? Elon Musk told Tucker Carlson he wanted to
classic Democratic cave.
Eliminate 300 federal agencies.
Yeah.
What are those agencies? Are they going to help people like flood victims? Are they protecting our food, our air and water? Are they preventing diseases? FEMA? What are those? Put them on the table. Where are you going to get your $2 trillion? You get it from Social Security, Medicare. You're going to get it from education. You're going to get it from disease prevention. Where is that coming from? Put it on the table and let's have a big giant debate about it, because they're doing this thing at the exact same moment that Donald Trump and the Republicans are trying to pass a multi-trillion-dollar unpaid for tax cut for billionaires and corporations.
Yeah, I think that is the sort of general advice on all of these things, which is think about how an action, not just words, not like Donald Trump said something crazy or Elon Musk said something crazy or the cabinet secretaries who are all fucking nuts said something crazy, but we should focus on how these policies and actions and legislation actually affect real people, because I think that is, we sometimes just get caught up in the offensive comments and the craziness and the chaos, which there's plenty of, but voters care about what actually affects them, and they could do a lot of damage, all these people, so we'll see.
As people who work in government and believe, as part of our political philosophy, that government can and should help people, we understand the value of experts and experienced people doing these jobs, because we've seen it when there are good people in those jobs and bad people in those jobs.
Yeah, this really worries me. This my biggest fear about the next 4 years is not about the part that's out of our control entirely, which is the actions of the Trump administration. It's that there's going to be enough.
Up here, but now there are freaking communists invading.
There's going to be enough collusion from centrist Dems to allow Donald Trump to be able to do more than he would otherwise be able to do. That the few things that the Democrats could possibly pull the brakes on, they will negotiate on instead. That's my biggest concern. And the fact that the Pod Johns are going seamlessly to this guy is a threat to democracy. He's a threat to our American way of life. To we're just going to have to work with them. And if they come up with good ideas, we're going to have to be good idea. Right? Just fucking throw people right under the bus.
That is not how most of the public sees this. They don't necessarily think that some of these people that Trump has appointed should be disqualified simply because they don't have quote unquote government experience. Right? They just elected Donald Trump twice. So
not putting a premium on government experience.
Yeah, they've been pretty clear on what they think about traditional political experience. And so the arguments we make about these people, as I think we did around RFK Jr., is, as you pointed out, what they will actually do will hurt people. And I think an important meta argument, because we want to tie all these people together, is not that it's a bunch of inexperienced clowns, is that Donald Trump is picking a bunch of people who are loyal to him above anything else, who will put Donald Trump's interests first, not your interests. And that is the thread that combines them all. And I think that's how to talk about this.
Yeah, I very much agree. Okay, when we come back from the break, you'll hear my conversation with Congressman and Senator-elect Andy Kim. Two quick things before we do that. On this week's episode of Polar Coaster, Dan, you looks at what the polls got, where they fell short, and what we still don't know.
We're done with that. Now, I got a request to take a look at what's going on with Morning Joe. Massively hypocritical. These people were, in no uncertain terms, calling out Donald Trump as a fascist 2 weeks ago. And now they are going to Mar-a-Lago to have a little tete-a-tete with the Trumpster.
Okay, so here.
Let's get a flavor for this at least.
The past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens.
So how are they going to pivot, right? You literally said the guy's a fascist. You weren't making that up. You were quoting his generals. You were quoting his cabinet officials. Multiple sources talking about how his instincts are fundamentally authoritarian. And you know, in many ways, he admires the German government under Hitler, the German military under Hitler, right? You correctly blew the whistle on that shit. Now, I don't know, should that have been the, centerpiece of Kamala's campaign the way that it was? Probably not. Probably not, right? The thing that works best on these tyrants is to ridicule them, is to cut the legs out from under their ego, right? If you want to defeat somebody like this, right? So I don't think this should have been the centerpiece, right? But again, like, what does this do? This allows Kamala to continue her campaign without making any promises, without doing the things that she needs to do, like promising to make the average American worker's life easier when it feels like it's slipping out of their hands. Instead of doing that, we talked about the creeping danger of fascism. And I don't think they were wrong about that. I just think that they went about, fighting it in the wrong way. Regardless, right? This is the couple, the power couple. Now, if you don't know who this is, right? This Joe Scarborough here is a former Republican congressman under a different Republican regime. It's part of the left, I guess, of the current batshit MAGA coalition, right? And you got Mika Brzezinski, the daughter of Zbigniew Brzezinski, a huge figure in international relations from the Carter and the Clinton administrations, right? They're married. They were on their, they had the show together, and at some point they revealed that they had been dating and that they were getting married, and so they're like a power couple, right? And it's the most annoying lib show that you'll ever fucking see. It's like, it's the worst, right? If you think The View is bad, you haven't seen Morning Joe. But after all this discussion of Trump being utterly beyond the pale, they are now pivoting to justifying outreach to Trump, right? I don't know how much of this is their idea, their attempt to retain some kind of influence in a government that's all three branches have been taken over by the Republicans, or how much of this is like their bosses at MSNBC saying, you got to play nice with Trump now, like, right? We can't have you being the fucking enemy within, right? You gotta make nice with him.
Deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask, back.
Why not?
Why wouldn't we?
Oh, I called it. I called it.
Political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we.
So after correctly identifying somebody as, as not just like a fascist, and I see you, chat, like, correctly noting that there are elements of fascism have been present in the United States government and are actually pretty instrumental to a lot of the United States policy through the years. But, somebody who is in a mask-off way embraced the government of Adolf Hitler. All right, if I can be more specific, if that helps you. They are now saying, well, it's time that we make peace with Hitler. Peace in our times. There we go. That's what we got from Morning Joe. Not that we expect much from these assholes. Not that we expect much from the neoliberal establishment. But Jesus fucking Christ.
Know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans.
Wasn't Mika crying on The View about how dangerous Trump was? Yeah, exactly.
Election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realized.
I'm sorry, but these people.
Something different, and
these people are craven. They have no, self. They have no authenticity. They are purely political creatures.
Starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
Like, these aren't independent actors who are giving their perspective on the, current governments and, nominees, etc. Right? They're literally filled by whatever is in power. That's what animates them. That's where their words come from. That's where they're empty. There's nothing there. There's no person there.
Somebody close to Donald Trump told me this past weekend, this is a president who's not seeking re-election, so maybe, just maybe, now could be the time for both parties to get to work. And I know.
To get to work cutting Social Security and Medicare. Yeah, there we go. There we go, Joe.
Read every day.
As long as they can have their grand bargain, right? They're cool.
Seem like a stretch, but think about.
They are husk. Yeah, Omega Star, you're right.
Of the
no moral compass.
150 million votes cast. Donald Trump got 50%. Kamala Harris got about 49%. So I don't know. Seems to make sense for leaders of both parties to seek common ground, if it's possible at all. And I will tell you, a lot of Democratic...
You don't have any leverage, right? All you're going to do is ingratiate yourself to those in power, which is apparently all you cared about in the first place.
Leaders we've talked to this past week, since the election, have told Mika and me it's time for a new approach. And when I say top Democrats, I mean top Democrats. They said, we're open, and this was before we talked to Donald Trump. They said, listen,
okay,
we're open to...
This is really concerning.
...working with the incoming president.
As cringy as hashtag and disingenuous as hashtag resistance was, this is more worrying. The fact that they're just going to they're ready to roll over for the Republicans.
If the incoming president is open to working with us.
Yeah, the question is, though, how do we get there? Hyperbole and personal attacks will not work. My hair on fire doesn't work. We've all seen that. What also does not work is threatening political opponents with arrest, harassment, and even jail. That is a failed path.
So he's all like they're all like, well, so, this enemy within thing, this going after the media thing, you can't do that. But we are willing to throw anybody you want. Just name the constituency that the Democratic Party supposedly sticks up for, and we will throw them the fuck under the bus for your pleasure. My lord.
Recent history has proven that impeachments and trials turn those on trial into political martyrs and only make them more popular.
Oh yeah, so don't even try to have accountability for elected officials.
With the American people.
They've given up on the battle of the Nixon administration. They've given up on water. According to what they're saying, Richard Nixon was done dirty. He should have been above the law. You know, send your burglars in to steal the medical records of candidates that you don't want to run against as president, so that you can rat fuck them out of ever getting out of the primary.
Just ask Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. We know this will be a consequential presidency. The question is whether it will be constructive. It will take a new approach from all sides, from both parties, and a leader who can bring them together. And only time will tell if Donald Trump is that leader.
And a bunch of glad-handing assholes in the press to say that the emperor's clothes are fucking beautiful. Yes.
As for us, we also
to gaslight us into thinking he's not fucking sitting there naked, talking about Hannibal Lecter while he fillets a microphone.
Continue to speak truth to power and push back hard when called for. As we have
when he calls for it. Would you please push back hard on me? I'd like that.
With all presidents.
It's so hard to take these people seriously. If there's one thing, if there's one silver lining from this, you know, god-awful election, maybe it could be the final stripping away of any pretense of respectability from the mainstream media, the neoliberal establishment, etc., etc. The recognition that the sinner, in fact, will not hold and has not held.
Don't be mistaken. We're not here to defend or normalize Donald Trump.
You just did that! What do you think you were doing?
We're here to report on him and to hopefully provide you insights that are going to better equip all of us in understanding these deeply unsettling times. And I am reminded of what Marty Baron, legendary editor, told his Washington Post reporters back in the first term. We're not going to war. We're going to work. So let's go to work now with David Ignatius. David.
Yeah, let's dip out. Okay, that's it, chat. That's it. That's depressing. That's scary. That's awful. God damn. All right, so here's the deal. You've been watching along with us in shorts. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad you could spend some time, going over this. I know this is like hard stuff to watch and absorb. It's it's a scary time, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not. I'm not going to sit here and tell you things are going to be okay where every sign points in the opposite direction. But it is, I think, important not to look away. It is important to to do what we can and to not just to not just check out, right? We're going to be continuing the stream on the full screen stream, right? So the short stream is going to end, but the full screen stream is going to continue, and we're going to continue. We're going to go over the current drama with Ethan Klein and Ludwig. And, this is the whole Twitch adpocalypse thing that involves Hasanabi, etc., right? That's what we're going to be talking about next. So if you'd like to join us in that, I'm going to give you a link that you can click on, and you can stay with the stream. Otherwise, it's been nice hanging out. Yeah, there you go, Narwhal. Thank you. That's exactly what I was... Whoops, that's not the right thing. I didn't copy. It's a good thing we're not leaving it up to me to But yeah, I'm gonna end the stream now. You might be rated into the full-scale stream, or you could also click on the button to join us there. And otherwise, I will see you next time we stream.